Hi again, everyone, from Cedar Rapids. This is Bob Ask with my story. My life in historical context. That big world and my little world, my corner of the earth. Today, it's vignette number 19. Out of our series total, a projected 20. We're almost to the finish line. That comes in our next session. Today, we have a special vignette. I entitled it, A Book Review. Fight, Team, Fight. 63 Years of Jayhawk Football by John Hegarty. He's my co-host today, sitting beside me. We're in our letter jackets from college days. My college days are about 30 years before his, so my letter jacket from William Penn doesn't get around. But John there from Northwestern College, Twin Cities, still looks prime in his. So here we are, the two authors, historians, and in our letter jackets. But you might ask yourself initially, why is this in my series of 20? How does it warrant a special vignette? Two reasons. First of all, I'm in that story all 63 years. The first 25 as a coach, and every year since then as an observer and a participant in some way as a part of the Jayhawk football program. So I'm in that book, and it is part of my story. The second reason is I helped John during the almost 2 years of labor of love as we worked together two or three times a week, over the phone so many times, and that labor of love turned out to be an outstanding book that we feature today. First of all, a little bit about our relationship. And for those few of you perhaps who don't know John, most of you do, who is John Hegarty? First of all, he comes from a family friendship that goes back to when we arrived in Cedar Rapids, the Hegartys and the Asks at Calvary Baptist Church. I co-taught a class, a Bible study, Sunday school class with John Sr. So I've known John since he was just a toddler. But I've known him as an older friend since his high school days. When I was a Sunday school teacher, John Jr. was in my class, and he even remembers some of those days long, long ago. John is a student athlete from Jefferson in the mid-70s, part of the heyday of Jefferson athletics. He became a science teacher. My kids still call John one of their favorite teachers, Emily and Jordan, science teacher. And he was a long-time standout wrestling coach back when Jeff was in its heyday of state wrestling. He was an assistant wrestling coach. He was a football coach for Jeff for a long period of time, long after my time there, but I remember those days. He was a sophomore head coach with several titles, and his 2 years of 2000 and 2001 I believe, if I remember right, were unbeaten teams. Then he became the varsity defensive coordinator, working with Dave Jacobson, and he was a part of that year 2000. I'll go back. The unbeaten teams were 90 and 91, and his good team with the varsity was 2000. Make sure you had that correction. John, since the year 2001, has been a radio analyst for Metro football, covering all the Metro games. First he was with KCRG, and now he's been with Scott Unash at KGM for a long period of time, covering sports from the radio booth, where he does an outstanding job of analyzing, amazingly, all the things that are going on and able to fit his quips perfectly in with Scott Unash and the play-by-play. So now I might add, there's another feature of John you should know. He has a lovely wife, Kay, who was sort of another helper in the venture that we're sharing. Kay, a professor at the University of Iowa. Now, what's in this book that makes it such an outstanding book? Well, that is the primary reason that I'm sharing this, more than just the fact that it's part of my story. I want to proclaim it. I want to promote it. And first of all, I'll do that by sharing with you what's in it. You'll be amazed. And I'm only sharing a portion of it. But here are some of the key features you'll find in Fight, Team, Fight. 63 years of Jayhawk football. All 578 games. All those scores. And built around the 9 coaches' regimes. We should also point out that he has a tremendous chapter with a lot of research behind it, going into what was West Side Cedar Rapids football before Jeff, going back to old Grant High School, and then the 4 city schools that made up the Metro football before Jeff and Wash. So there's a portion of the origins of West Side football. He has a very interesting piece on his journey through this effort, what prompted him, how he went about it, because it's no easy undertaking for sure. That proved true. And so he has a section on his journey up that road. He has a chapter on sophomore football that are not left out. All those great Jefferson sophomore teams are all packed in there. 6 adjuncts, which are inherent to a good program. We didn't leave out the doctors, the trainers, the managers, the cheerleaders, the Band of Blue, our famous Band of Blue, and the outstanding Booster Club. He has a section on the Jayhawk coaches, or Jayhawk players who went into coaching. Quite a few of them became real good football coaches. He has a section on who we voted on and surprisingly agreed on almost entirely, the top 12 football players in Jefferson history. What an interesting section that you readers will want to take a look at. And if you want to later on say, hey, how about so-and-so. And then we have a section on the Cedar River rivalry. I say we because I was the one that was privileged enough to give it its name, the East-West Cedar rivalry, going back a couple years between Jeff and Walsh, the blue and the red. John puts in his book several vignettes of his own and an appendices of a lot of interesting additions. The Hall of Fame is in there. The year honors that was begun with Brian Webb. The honors winners are in there, and records galore. Team records, personal records. Oh, why, even has one section, I'll tell you just enough to whet your appetite, about the Czechs on the west side. Hey, John didn't leave them out. So a lot of special interest. And I might add, he was very generous to me. I'm in that book more than you might think. Before John takes over, there is 6 reasons. I talked about the what's in there. Now, how did he go about it? I think is interesting. And I think there are 6 reasons why this book is tremendous. Reason number 1, pictures. Now, I'm going to ask John a question. John, how many pictures are in your book? Can you guess?
I can maybe give you a ballpark figure, and I would say there's easily 300, if not closer to 4.
Okay, well, not too bad. I counted them one night. It took me most of the evening to double check, but there are, John, in your book, 661 pictures. Now, if it had turned out 666, I was going to tear out 5. I don't want 666 for you Bible students, but 661 pictures. Now, you don't believe it? Count them. A second reason
That's
for
a lot of
this
pictures.
outstanding book, the graphics by our genius, Todd Hunt. A tremendous genius in graphics. You'll see pretty soon the attractive cover and all the little things helping John get all 600 pictures in there. It took a lot from Todd. He oftentimes even joined our session in my den in the old house. A third reason why it's outstanding, it's up to date. We kind of squirmed summertime because 2 things had developed. Are we going to push back the publishing, or shall we hesitate and take the step of dealing with it? The pandemic is in the book, and all the changes in big school, high school, division, football, and playoffs, and the rationale that you'll be reading about in the future. It's up to date. A fourth reason for its magnitude, it's all encompassing. Hey, there were places in that story that was, like I said in one portion, not all peaches and cream. There were difficulties. There were some negatives. There were some times when John and I shook our heads. Well, we plunged ahead. Why? It happened. and we addressed it fairly. John did an excellent job of handling all those questionable situations that is natural in a 63-year football season. I might add, before I forget, a 64th year was played last fall during the publication. Didn't make it in the book. A fifth reason how it is outstanding. The context includes Metro, Mississippi Valley, and state information. It's a history of state, metro, conference, high school football. Nothing like it in print. All about the state, all about the nature of the game, and the teams entering and exiting the conferences and the champions and so forth. It's a tremendous history book beyond Jefferson. I don't know how John pulled it off, but I think I know. Endless investigation. It's a special history feature. But the foremost reason why Bob Ass says it's a great book, John's writing, now author, historian. To me, 4 elements underscore his unique and outstanding writing style. I call it really one of a kind. I've never seen it duplicated elsewhere. 4 reasons. I like his colorful, intriguing descriptions. He goes on and on in a colorful way. Talk about language style. He does it expertly. A second reason, he keeps the reader on edge, waiting for that next game, waiting for that next season. I read it, that manuscript, so many times, and every time through it, I was on edge. What's coming up? John handles it. He captures the feelings and the moods and the conditions at each stop during the way. What's the mood in Jayhawk football? What's the outlook after last season? Whether it was a great season or whether it was a tough season. He captures the mood, and then his narrative goes beyond the basics, the scores, the results, the records. He goes to the human interest tidbits, I call them, which illuminates the personal story of the Jayhawks. As I look back, these nearly 2 years, as we shared time on the phone, in the den while I was home, just this, our time together, how it went. I call it fond memories. Each of us, I recall, alone and together, went over the script as it kept growing and growing and growing. We'd go over it, and then together. We'd add, subtract, enhance, alter, it was a fun time as we debated and enhanced. And another thing I remember, in the middle of the night, I'd think of something. I couldn't wait to get to the phone to call John. I'd say, John, how about this? And I'd read it. And he'd say, hey, sounds okay. Let me take a look at it. And maybe he'd plug it in, or maybe he'd move it in somehow. I don't think John was very courteous. I don't think he turned me down. But I enjoyed those midnight dreams. John had me really hooked. I can remember John, the modest one. He didn't want to share that prestigious jacket. Hey, when you earn a letter in a college sport up in the Twin Cities, where he was, I think I remember right, conference runner-up, it bears inclusion. John had quite a personal story of interest, and I was glad to promote and forget that modesty. And then how we stood side by side in those tough questions, knowing that if it happened, it has to be recorded. And we supported each other, knowing that there might be some wondering. I don't believe any of that has really occurred. I might add a bonus. John and I had a lot of fun, non-football talks. We shared life. We shared God's Word. We shared even His songs. And we shared His many, many good times with me. That was more important than all the gridiron stuff. Now seated beside me, our guest, friend, author, historian, Coach John Hegarty, for his remarks, and then a surprise when he concludes as we wrap it up. John.
Well, thank you, Bob. This was supposed to be more about you because this is your story, so I'm going to kind of shift our focus back to the main subject here. Beyond his family, who had the only real front row seats to the life of Robert Ask, a few of us that are not named Ask were fortunate enough to occupy those church pews 1 or 2 rows back. As Bob said, I'm John Hegarty Jr., and our story, Bob's and mine, dates back to the early 60s. My first memories of him left a lasting impression. They were both spiritual and mental. It was on Wednesday evenings at Calvary Baptist. That was prayer meeting night. There, in the lower Vesper chambers, penitent men of God took turns, humbly supplicating themselves aloud before their Creator and in worship alongside each other. For this young boy, listening to Bob Ask, the elder, the deacon, the master of invocation, I was spellbound. His logic and sequential train of thought conveyed a depth of wisdom. His verbiage was stirring, gripping. His presence, as it is today, commanding. It was the first time while listening to someone speak that I was captivated, transported. The term transfixed also comes to mind. And although no one ever said it, it was universally agreed. Bob was always the last to pray out loud. No one dared follow his eloquence. This is where Jan rolls her eyes, isn't it, Bob? I can see you, Jan, rolling your eyes. Up until high school, I only saw Bob on Wednesdays and twice each Sunday. No, that's not entirely true. Growing up, I never missed a Kingston Stadium Friday night. And that includes the Saturday in frigid Kinnick Stadium when history was made. There, on the sideline, directing the most intimidating and menacing gritters in the state, was my spiritual mentor, Coach Ask. Once I arrived at Jefferson as a student, it was universally accepted by all. Mr. Ask was the dean of the social studies department. In choosing to enroll in his history class, be prepared to sit up straight, take copious notes, and focus. In room 119, history was serious business. For Bob, the study of our country's saga went far beyond a simple recitation of names and dates and places. It always included a broader view of mankind's dreams, motivations, triumphs, and yes, its downfalls and its failures. Always, always, the story was woven into the tapestry of the social, political, and economic times in which America lived its life. Like a chess master, he helped his classes see the whole board. Going off to college after Northwestern, I was in nearby Iowa City, and it was easy for me to come home each weekend. It was made even easier knowing that Mr. Ask would be my college Sunday school teacher. His weekly topics concerned the many journeys of the Apostle Paul. And yes, I instinctively sat erect and I took notes. Imagine, there were no quizzes though. Imagine my surprise when in 2010, my wife and I actually traveled through Greece and we visited some of the sites where Paul ministered. I told Bob recently, 1st and 2nd Corinthians took on a whole new meaning. But not really, because I had been so well prepared in those Sunday morning lessons. Upon graduation, following immense good fortune, I returned to Jefferson as a teacher and a coach. I'll give you one guess who one of the first members of the faculty to greet me in my new classroom was. Welcoming me home. Yes, it was the dean of 119. As a proud new addition to the Jayhawk faculty, one of the many traditions I was proud to partake in was watching Bob roast and toast retiring faculty at a social event we dubbed the Spring Fling. It was on such occasions that we privileged few witnessed Bob's playful comedic genius, ever so slightly off color, with a wink and a nod to innocent sexual innuendo, as much as his censor Marilyn would allow. The audience would laugh so hard as to get stomach cramps. Just as it was with his pregame prayers, you had to be there to understand the gift of his elocution. Shortly after I retired, that much anticipated practice of having good-natured fun with retirees was ceased. More's the pity. With Bob's institutional example before me, I found time existed intensely to research a topic that we both shared a passion for preserving: the 63-year history of Jefferson football. With Bob's hand squarely on my shoulder, the book Fight Team Fight came into existence. Since its publication in August, over 500 copies have been sold, mostly by word of mouth and Facebook. All Bob's special memories from football and anecdotes from those glory years are included. There are many ways to contact me if you want one, and remember, they make great gifts. It gives me great satisfaction to say there are only 2 books chronicling Jefferson High's history. There's Bob's immortal classic, High on a Hill, which you've seen before. The title, of course, taken from the school's loyalty song. And now there's mine, Fight Team Fight, the title taken from the school's fight song. And if you'll indulge me, I'd like to offer one final amplification before closing. How does one explain Bob's enduring imprimatur of class, grace, and stature? His zest for life and his sharp clarity of thought, to this day, some 94 years plus. If each of us were lucky enough to live that long, surely our wish is to be granted whatever magic Bob Ask has. And my theory is this, and it's not original to me. I discovered it in history class while studying the life of Theodore Roosevelt. When asked his secret for a successful life, TR responded with this maxim: black care rarely sits behind a writer whose pace is fast enough. Simply stated, engage in life so fully, with such great energy, enthusiasm, and a sense of duty, that the dark shadows which result from standing still cannot catch up with you. Say it again. Black care rarely sits behind a writer whose pace is fast enough. Now, if you have been listening carefully to each of Bob's weekly vignettes, the secrets to his longevity and happiness were systematically revealed, one topic at a time. Remember the Ask routine? Here's a very brief refresher. Teach your fanny off all day long. Then head directly to athletic practice. Home for a quick dinner, and then to Kirkwood to teach evening classes. Wednesday's prayer meeting. Friday night is game night. Saturday morning, more practice and a JV contest. Sundays, coaches' meetings. Don't forget church services, morning and night. June and July off? Absolutely not. There was summer school to teach and curriculum to write. That left annually 2 weeks available for the next football, before the next football season started, for a family vacation where Bob drove the family truckster through the fruited plain from sea to shining sea. Every week, every month, every year, lather, rinse, repeat. There you have it. Black care rarely sits behind a writer whose pace is fast enough. Thank you, Bob, for letting me share in narrating part of your story. You have anointed us all with a near century of your life-affirming stories and experiences. And as you have taught us, history matters. It always has. It always will. We can glean so much from your splendid example. Please continue. You have been on the right path for so long. And may all your future efforts be blessed, because as I see it, you're just getting warmed up.
Okay.
Pardon me for just one second.
Here it
You
is,
got it?
Jeff.
Okay. Here are the only 2 books to ever be written about Jefferson High School by the 2 men that you see in front of the screen.
We close with this just for fun. Jefferson high, high on a hill, sing we now thy praise. Colors blue and white, lead us in the right, our voices in tribute we raise. When graduation comes, we'll go our separate ways, but never will we lose the memories of these days. Jefferson high, framed by the sky, sing we thy song of praise.
High on a hill.
Fight, Jayhawks, fight. We raise the colors blue and white. Fight, Jayhawks, fight, and show the foe our strength and might.
Rah, rah, rah.
Win, Jayhawks, win. We stand to cheer you on your way. Fight, team, fight. Win, team, win. For Jefferson we shout hooray.
Jefferson Jayhawks, fight, fight.